Hello everyone, today I want to briefly talk to you about a topic that might not be appropriate for little children, and it has to do with some shady things that have happened, that have been done to women in history. And I want to suggest in this video that there are benefits for government, for us, to embrace the Christian worldview. And I want to discuss those things coming up. On YouTube, I came across a video by a YouTube channel that, if you're interested in looking that up, it's the YouTube channel Asian Boss. And they interviewed, I saw a couple of their interviews, two older women. One of them was already like in their 90s, and shortly after that interview, she passed away. These women are survivors of an injustice that was done to them and several other women from where they lived. If you're interested in learning more about them, they were called comfort women. And according to Wikipedia, these comfort girls, sometimes they were called, were women and girls forced into sexual slavery by the Imperial Japanese Army in occupied countries and territories before and during World War II. And the term comfort women is a translation of a Japanese word which I can't pronounce, but it's a euphemism for prostitutes. The interviews show these women sharing their memories of how they were innocent and they had no other choice but to just comply with what they were being forced to do. Sometimes their parents didn't even know what they were going to experience. And sometimes these women, when they eventually returned to their homes, chose not to disclose what was done to them, to, for example, their fathers, because it's just one of those things that I guess they felt it was shameful for them and they would be treated differently, even by like their neighbors. Some women chose not to share what was done to them, even to their spouses. Another woman decided not to get married because she felt like she wanted to just live with that on her own, and she didn't want that to become someone else's problem. I'm paraphrasing what I heard in the interviews. What's also sad is that one of those women shared that all she would really want is to be able to receive an acknowledgement that it happened and that it was wrong, and an apology. That would have sufficed for that woman. Some of these women would bring awareness when they were younger, and they would do rallies. And one of them shared that if the government ever reimbursed them for what was done to them, she would have liked to have donated that money to students that were too poor to study, because she felt that at her young age, 14 years old, when she was taken, she should have been studying, she should have been learning, as opposed to what she was forced to do. One of the ladies shared what was expected of them and how long on weekends they would have to do certain things. And one lady shared an experience where after the first time that they had to endure what they did, they wanted to take their own lives, and they tried to, but they were, rescued by the same people that enslaved them. That lady decided that she would survive to tell what was being done to them. And I just thought, okay, there are a lot of worldviews that talk about people being just kind of like animals, just kind of like, in a sense, like robots that are just kind of programmed, and like they're just programmed in such a way that they think that they have free will, but they don't. And so there's a lot of philosophers that don't believe in free will, but they acknowledge that whatever philosophy they do embrace and they do believe is true, it's not livable. One philosopher, I forget his name, said something like, "This is what I believe, explains reality, that free will is just like an illusion. But when I think about my daughter in those terms, it's kind of like repulsive. And it's kind of like embracing a mentality that psychopaths have, where they feel nothing for like other human beings." I'm sure I oversimplified that, but that was more or less the gist that I understood, having read about some philosophers' views in the book Finding Truth by Nancy Pearcey. So I want to give credit where that information is coming from. Hopefully I'm saying it correctly here, but this got me thinking that you have these women that are being forced against their will to do something for their survival. And if the world was that simple, that free will didn't exist, then through their experience, why isn't it so simple as just like, although they did acknowledge if they wanted to live, they had to comply. So like, how come there is still that sadness, that injustice, that anger, that trauma for the rest of their lives? How come human beings are not these oversimplified things that can just live their life like, oh, survival of the fittest, right? This is what life means to me. I just have to go through this to survive, and and that's just how simple it is. No, in these interviews, these women cried. These women, as they recounted their experience, they talked about it with that evil tone. They knew it was an injustice. This shouldn't have happened. And it just reminded me a lot about how often the Christian worldview is mocked, is even fought against, sometimes by Christians, people that call themselves Christians, about being overly concerned about, for example, modesty issues or, abstinence issues. And I feel like it's so easy to get lost in America when it comes to human sexuality, because we have the benefit of operating in a society that embraces things that the Christian worldview teaches, like freedom, free will, consequences for our actions. We're not operating as if like a psychopath is simply just doing what it comes natural to him. No, those people that commit those crimes are sent to jail. They are considered responsible for their actions. For example, rapists, child molesters, they go to jail. They are held responsible. We don't operate in a world where we think, well, they're just doing what they think is good for them to do. It's natural for men to have these. No, we operate in a society that we have called certain things wrong, evil, and we hold people accountable for those things. We believe that people have the freedom to choose to do otherwise. So back to the Christian worldview mocking thing when it comes to human sexuality and calling certain things sinful. I believe that if we embrace the things that are taught within the Christian worldview having to do with human sexuality, then these beliefs will hold governments accountable, and even the citizens that are part of that country, to respect a woman's body, to respect a woman's free will, And obviously, these things apply to men as well, but specifically, I'm talking about the experiences of comfort women. And, although these soldiers are single or they were married and they have these sexual urges, the Bible teaches that we have self-control. We even have an example in the Bible of Uriah, a man that instead of doing what the king David had told him to do, go to your wife's house, he decided not to because all the other soldiers weren't given the same privilege. And so he opted to have self-control and to not go to his wife's home. We hear the story of Joseph. The wife of his ruler wanted to entice him to have those relations with him. He ran away. And so many other stories of success in that department. Joseph, how he respected Mary all that time that she was pregnant with Jesus. And a lot of stories in the Bible that show us the failures in that area as well. When you step outside of America and you look at all the tragedies, the evil that has been done, specifically in this video, to women and are being done today, when you step outside of that American bubble and you realize, wait a minute, there are some good things about this Christian worldview that respects the sexuality of women, that respects the rights of women, that protects women, that advocates for the respect of women as a whole. We see that there are more protections even in our country, even with all of the, sexual revolution and all of that impact in our country. Still, we see more protections because we do embrace this Christian worldview in our government. We are influenced heavily by a Christian worldview.